I'm Catherine Weddle with HOMTV, and I'm here with Carol Siemon, the Ingham County Prosecutor, and we're here to talk about a new policy regarding firearms. So, could you give me a little summary of that? Tell me the basics of it.
Sure. So this is the second policy that I've initiated in the last couple weeks. This follows up with a policy that we implemented last summer, which was resisting and obstructing police officers, and those all usually arose out of traffic stops. So we have been working for the last couple of years and more intensely for the last year or so on getting data, our own data, but we didn't have an ability to pull it, that talks about how cases come to us and what the demographics are of individuals who are charged with certain crimes. And so we're learning a lot, and it's very consistent with what we're learning nationally, and that is that Black and brown people are disproportionately brought into the system at the stage where the police brings the case to us. And then as it progresses through the system with decisions we make, we can impact how deeply people continue to be brought into the system. And there are areas we definitely need to work on.
All right, so when did this conversation initially start? Obviously the policies are new in the last couple of weeks, but.
Well, so I was an assistant prosecutor from 1983 to 1995, and I certainly, even in that time, that was when we really truly were having a rise in crime, all crime areas, and that's when a lot of Get Tough on Crime initiatives really went into place. It's also when I started noticing the disproportionate representation of Black and brown people in the courtroom and the court system who went to jail and prison. So it's always been in the back of my mind. I'm an activist. I'm really candid on that. I ran in 2016 and 2020 on a reform platform. And so what I've been doing is consistent with that. So what we're saying is that when you know that disproportionately people are being charged, they're being searched, they're being stopped for traffic stops, that was the traffic stop policy, saying basically if it's a non-public safety issue, tail light out, something, dangling ornament on your rear view mirror, something pretty inconsequential, not drunk driving or speeding or running stop signs, that we're going to discourage the police from making those stops and using those as opportunities to search. Because that is just very highly disproportionately against Black and brown people. So that was policy a couple weeks ago. And then following on that, I've also been looking for a long time at the issue of felony firearm. Because while firearms and gun violence right now are very serious, the felony firearm statute is a very unique and odd statute. It's one that is unique to Michigan, and it was enacted in 1976, and it was enacted to stem the increase in gun violence. It was basically saying if you use a gun, carry one, do two. You have mandatory 2 years in prison. Problem is, it never did what it was supposed to do. It did not in any way reduce gun violence. And in fact, what it resulted is what we now have at 82% of the people incarcerated in Michigan prisons as of 2018 for felony firearm are Black. That's a pretty, disproportionate number. And out of Ingham County, it's very similar. So it was an easy way to say we're going to take this one statute off the consideration so we can focus our attention on the actual serious crimes people are committing or the circumstances of their behavior.
Okay, so obviously in the new press release and in the new policy, the felony firearm policy, the ICPO is no longer issuing charges for these felony firearms except under the circumstances, like you said. Could you give me like a more specific example of a circumstance where you guys would?
Sure. So for example, an area that we have a lot of difficulty with is domestic violence. It's very common that the person who's been abusing this other individual will often coerce them or make promises and get them to drop charges. So we often will have a criminal history on somebody that does not actually reflect their true level of bad behavior. So in situations like that situation where we say we're going to use that extra leverage of a habitual supplementation or a felony firearm, because that way we're basically reflecting their actual history. So situations of witness intimidation are a big one, or where we can't make a case because of evidence that we're not able to obtain, but we know, so the case isn't as strong as it might be otherwise. So situations like that, or a situation where a defendant may say, listen, I'm faced with these other charges. I want the certainty of 2 years in prison. Can I plea bargain? Can you add that? And that does happen. It happened last week on a case. So that might be a situation where it's initiated by the defendant for the certainty of the sentence, that we would indeed issue that.
So what would you say to an Ingham County resident who may be concerned that this might put their safety at risk, or that you're not prosecuting people the correct way, or people are confused about it or angry?
Sure. And, certainly I have heard that there's confusion and anger about this. So as I indicated in the press releases and the study, the Safe and Just Michigan study makes it very clear. This is not a public safety issue. I'm very concerned. I live in this community. I've been involved in prosecution since 1983. Gun violence is horrific. Child abuse and domestic violence are up. We really have to have a multifaceted approach to deal with those. But this is not about gun safety. This is really our public safety. This is strictly a race equity issue. The other charges, because someone only can be charged with a felony firearm, and this is not to be confused with felon in possession, which is a different charge. Felony firearm, if they have another felony, so you come in because you have a felonious assault or an armed robbery or a homicide or some other felony charge. So what we're saying is let's focus our attention on getting good results, accountability on those charges, and then we don't need this very racially disproportionate, totally inequitable way, a tool. We don't need that tool in our toolbox. We have other tools we should be using.
Absolutely. So what kind of results are you hoping to get from this? How fast do you think you'll be seeing results? Do you think there'll be any more steps you take to further this movement for you?
Well, we're looking at any policy changes over time, and also, as it was indicated, we support legislative changes. We work with the Board of Commissioners and other groups, community groups. So we're always looking at how all system parts can change. But in regards to what our office does, we're going to continue to look at the data, see what the numbers say, and it takes time usually for data to be enough of it to be gathered to analyze. But we're hoping that by driving down these numbers, that we're reflecting a more fair way of approaching the issues in our community.
So is there anything else you'd like to add? Anything else to tell everybody?
I appreciate the opportunity to talk about this. It is very confusing. People get very frightened. It's a normal reaction. I think we all are right now because the rise in gun usage and violence in the country is very disturbing right now. I can say I lived it, in the 80s and 90s when crime was really going up. 1991 was the peak. It's gone down since then. Even now with a rise in violence, we have not reached what we reached back then. But it is very concerning, cannot be ignored. And I'm working on all kinds of initiatives and working with the police, working with different community groups. So we have a really broad range of responses that can address the needs at all the different levels.
And if anyone has any questions regarding these new policies or any other policies, is there anyone specific they can contact or reach out to?
Great. They can email. I'll probably give it to somebody else or someone will discuss it with me, but it can go to the individual on the press release or it can come to me and we'll make sure that we address it.
Absolutely. Great. Well, thank you so much for being here with me today. It means a lot. I'm sure everyone will be very curious to learn about the new policies that will be affecting them. So thank you so much. And with HOMTV, I'm Catherine Weddle.
Thank you.
Thank you.